I'll just do a little bit of my introduction, which I normally do, so we can just be ready to get started. So I want to thank Pete and Eric for doing this for us. We're really appreciate that you guys would take the time to come in and do it. So I got to thank a few of our sponsors, which are the folks at Pro Photo Daily, David Schernhauer and Jeff Roberts, and they also run AI and a American Photographer. The wonderful folks at Epson, who've been with us for a long time, and the great folks at Photo Shelter. You should also know next month is our night where we share the stage with ASMP, where they will be supplying the photographers and we'll have our show. So we're hoping you guys all can come back for that. That's February 17th. So we have Pete Souza, and we're going to start with Eric Draper. Let me give you a little bit of an introduction on Eric. Eric has served as George W. Bush chief's photographer for the entire 8 years of his presidency, photographing him daily in his activities at the office, abroad, and in his personal life. Draper was named special assistant to the president and is the first White House photographer to be named a commissioned officer to a U.S. president. During his tenure, Draper directed the photographic and archival conversion of the White House photo office from film to digital and took nearly 1 million photographs documenting the presidency. He has a book published called Front Row Seat that you can purchase right off his website. Draper also worked for the AP for 8 years, covered an array of domestic and international news and sports. He has worked as a staff photographer for the Seattle Times, the Pasadena Star News, and the Albuquerque Tribune. He is currently a freelance corporate and editorial photographer based in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, where he lives with his wife and 2 dogs. He is an obsessive Laker fan. So, Eric, it's all yours.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks again for inviting me, and thank you, Pete, for thinking of inviting me. So I'm going to share my screen here. So you guys see a photo?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right, we're working. So I'm out here in Albuquerque, and I do, just to give you some current work, what I'm doing nowadays post White House. One of my clients is Virgin Galactic. And of course, you recognize this fellow here, Mr. Branson, who wants to make history with space tourism. And I do some celebrity portraiture here. There's a big movie business that's booming here in New Mexico. Matter of fact, there was a big announcement last month or a few months ago that Netflix will put their production base here in Albuquerque. So that's very exciting. This is Tom Hiddleston. You might recognize him. This is a few years ago. He plays a lot of those evil characters in those Marvel movies.
Okay.
Some concert photography, some travel photography. This is Istanbul, very fascinating place. Saratoga, Wyoming. There's a bull in a field. I was actually, there was a fence between he and I, so I felt pretty safe taking this photo. Back in New Mexico, I didn't have to travel too far for this image. This is actually a roadrunner grabbing a lizard off the corner of my house. I actually took the photo from the window of my car in order to capture it. And believe it or not, at post White House, I did put my toes back into political photography. I was Mitt Romney's photographer back in 2012 when he ran for president. I want to go back to my early years before the White House and kind of talk about how I ended up working there and show some of my early work for the Associated Press, which actually really was a great way to kind of become a seasoned photographer for the White House, because it's, you know, through the years at the AP, I learned a lot, and I used everything I learned at the AP and brought it to the White House, especially when it comes to the digital conversion from taking the White House from film to digital. The AP sent me to Haiti back in 1995. This is a Haitian boy standing in front of the military compound following a military coup. And the U.S. was there to restore order, and they lit the compound the night that the order was restored. And that's the president, Aristide, who returned to power. Also, the AP sent me to Japan to cover the Kobe earthquake. I was in Los Angeles at the AP at the time, and I covered the Northridge quake. By the way, I'm talking like all these 90s stories, by the way, just so you realize the time period. And so after I covered the Northridge earthquake for the AP, they decided I was like the earthquake expert. So a year to the date later, exactly a year to the date, the earthquake in Kobe, Japan happened. And so they decided to send me there to cover the aftermath. And it was amazing. I mean, it made the LA earthquake look like peanuts compared to what happened in Kobe, Japan. And one of the things that the AP had me do was I was using the very first professional production digital camera that the AP was producing. Some of us might remember this very crude hybrid camera called the NC 2000. It was like literally a film camera with a back on it, and no screen. And I can't believe I made it work, but I did. I think that's why the AP really liked to send me around and use that remotely back for the wire services. It really helped dramatically with against the wire competition. Also, I believe this is 1998. The AP sent me to the border of Macedonia and Kosovo to cover the Albanian refugee crisis. And this was during the war in Kosovo, and there's nearly 500,000 people streaming across the border, and the Macedonians did not want them in their country. So they're in this area they called no man's land, and they were trapped. And it's very horrific conditions. And finally, the international community came to their rescue and started to airlift all the families out. And unfortunately, that resulted in some separation of families, which this gentleman here with his son is on a bus being driven to the airport, separated from the rest of his family. In Los Angeles, I covered the O.J. Simpson trial. Actually, the entire story. I was actually at the murder scene, one of the few journalists there following the murders, and there's actually a very graphic image that's of the walkway there, of all the blood and stuff. It's on my website, but I thought we could try to keep this PG rating here.
Yep.
But I was also one of the pool photographers for the Associated Press. There were other agencies inside the courtroom, and so I would photograph in the back of the courtroom, and there's actually a remote camera that was developed just for the trial that was run by a photographer in the hallway. So we had two views of the trial itself. The AP sent me to London to cover the funeral of Princess Diana. And I covered a lot of sports. So I probably did like 70% sports for the Associated Press. This is the Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan. And I was focused on figure skating that year. And this is Tara Lipinski, who was the youngest gold medalist in figure skating that year. She was 15. And then, of course, politics, which the AP assigned me to cover the Bush campaign, and that's me in my younger days. And I covered the entire campaign from day one to the very end. And the White House job was not a plan for me at all. It was an opportunity that really presented itself later. And it actually wasn't until after the election that I decided to pursue the position. And that's the number one question I get is like, how do you become the White House photographer? And every photographer has their own story. And but when I did become the photographer, it really did turn my world upside down. Where I mean, I didn't own a suit before the White House. So in this image here, if you don't recognize me, I'm the second guy from the left there in this group photo. But like I said before, when the election wasn't decided that evening in Austin, Texas, I was just curious about who became the White House photographer, just out of curiosity. And the more I investigated the more I realized I had a shot at this job. And it was like, they say timing is everything. So just by luck, I discovered I was invited to a Christmas party in Austin, Texas. And Gore had just conceded, the Supreme Court had ruled, and now Governor Bush is now President-elect Bush. And it was perfect timing for me to use, take a play out of the President-elect's playbook. During the campaign, he had a stump speech, and he would always say, "I'm going to look you in the eye and ask you for the job. I want to be your president." So I decided to use that idea. And so at the party, my wife and I were there with my wife, coaching me on the sidelines to make my move for that. And I came prepared. I had a portfolio, I had a cover letter. The staff knew what I was going to do. And I walked up to the president and I said, "Thank you for inviting us to the party. By the way, I want to be your personal photographer." And he looked at me like he never thought about it before. And he looked away and he said, "I really appreciate that. I'll get back to you." And a week later, I'm back in Austin, Texas, interviewing for the job, and with Andy Card, the chief of staff. And I never forget that there are two things I remember from that interview. One was Andy Card asked me a question. He said, "Can you manage?" And I said, "Of course." I was, agreeable to everything, of course. And I had a staff to hire, I had an office to run. But then he said that working at the White House was like trying to drink water through a fire hose at full throttle, and he was right. 9/11, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the Hurricane Katrina, the worst natural disaster in history, 2 funerals for a president, a funeral for a pope, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. I traveled to nearly 70 countries with President Bush, 49 states. We didn't make it to Vermont, unfortunately. So what I like to do is go back to the very beginning, and I tried to approach this like a long-term photo story. It was more like a marathon actually, and I like to go back to the very beginning. And this was my pretty much one of my first images that I made of the president, and this is right after I got the job, 3 days before the inauguration in 2001. And this is the first time I had seen the president since I got the job, so I didn't know exactly what to expect. I didn't know how much access I would get. I was nervous. There was no rule book really. And what I like about this image is very symbolic. The president's holding a cowboy hat. He's looking back at Texas for the last time before flying to Washington to become president. And right after I made this picture, he walked up to me and he said, "Welcome aboard, Eric. We will see the world together. We will see everything." And that really just put me at ease. And really, I thought, this is going to be a great ride. This is what we did not see a week ago. This is the traditional coffee with the incoming president and the outgoing president in the Blue Room of the White House. This happens typically every morning of the inauguration before the swearing-in ceremony. And then there's the 43rd president walking through the Oval Office doors for the very first time. And this is my first time in the Oval Office. And by the way, the West Wing on Inauguration Day is it's like chaos. They're movers, they're painters, they're carpenters everywhere, and everyone's discovering where their office is. And I discovered that my office was in the basement of the West Wing. And my office had a little history. It's the old barber shop. There are old photos of President Ford getting his hair cut. My desk sat in front of the original mirror of that office. And I never forget, I'm standing there just realizing where my office was, and the phone rings. And a person on the line says, "Eric, you need to get to the Oval Office right away." But I didn't know where the Oval Office was. It was really my first time walking around the West Wing. So I grabbed my cameras, I go screaming through the hallway, and everyone's kind of pointing me in the right direction. And I end up in the Rose Garden, which is actually was the best place because I see the president walking from the residence through the colonnade in the darkness. And he has a gaggle of people behind him. And I backpedal to make this image of him walking through the Oval Office door for the first time. And behind him is his father. And right away, there's history being made. You have several layers to this image. You have the proud father seeing his son sitting at the Oval Office desk, the famous Resolute desk for the first time. You have 2 presidents together, only the second son of a president to become president. But then you always have the story behind the story. So you see that cord coming from the wall. Well, that's was a massage chair, and the president's actually turning it on at this moment. That's leading to the laughter. This was another human moment on inauguration evening. And let me set the scene here real quickly. This is the president and the first lady in the limousine on their way to the very last ball of the night. And right away, I was just amazed at my access. And the president was instantly very comfortable with my presence. And I think he really respected the role of the White House photographer. So I think maybe seeing his father work with his photographer, David Valdez, he probably knew exactly, what the type of access I wanted. But this is like day one. I was already amazed at my access. But what I love about this picture, this is a perfect example of their personalities, because the president he's an extrovert. He's just out there, and Mrs. Bush is more reserved. The Oval Office is a great place for light. This is an early image of the Oval Office. You might notice the carpet there is blank, and this was a kind of a placeholder before the president designed his own rug. And every president gets to decide what rug and what furniture they use. They decide what desk they want to use, and what paintings and sculptures. And this is what the Oval Office rug looked like later. That was designed by Mrs. Bush, the First Lady. This image was made by, I mounted the camera on the top of the Oval and had it there for the visit of Pope Benedict during the second term. I wanted to get that heavenly view. This is a reverse angle, basically, where you don't normally see the ceiling of the Oval Office, but this is what it looks like. There's an embossed seal on the top, and you can see where that recessed lighting in the background there, that's where I had my camera mounted for that other photo. I like to call this photo "Timing is Everything," and this is a great example of President Bush, who was really, really timely. I mean, timely to the point of keeping his staff on their toes. I mean, he hated to run late. He felt that keeping people waiting for events to start was rude. He would typically start his meetings on time or early, typically early. This photo was taken the first week of the administration. Just got this pure luck that I was able to raise my camera fast enough to snap it and not have a Secret Service agent in the background, like in the hallway down on the right. There are the quiet times with the president, of course, and I would try to pick and choose my moments, because the president's never really alone. I tried to really give him peace and quiet when there was a time, but I would just really try to be picky with my moments. What I loved about the Oval Office is that all walks of life would come to the Oval Office, from a Boy Scout to an old friend from Texas to a new world leader. This is President Karzai from Afghanistan, his first visit to the Oval Office. This was a powerful moment with the Martin Luther King family. That's the late Coretta Scott King on the left. This is in 2002, I believe. This is she's holding the plans for the MLK Memorial. She was still raising money for it, which was hadn't been built yet. The president had a great sense of humor, which a lot of people don't realize unless you're around him a lot. He had a God-given talent of using that humor at the right time to kind of ease tension, to break the ice, to disarm people. He's really a kind of a really fun-loving person. This particular morning, a gift arrived on the Oval Office desk, and it was a silk boxing robe, like the real deal. He put it on. He's looking around to show it off to someone. And of course, the president would use humor at the expense of the first lady sometimes. This is the president getting dressed during the second inauguration for the Texas Black Tie and Boots Ball. And the president was a biker, an avid mountain biker, and during the second term, he would receive all kinds of gifts, bikes, like from mountain bikes to road bikes. And I believe this was a gift from the president of Indonesia, who gave him a fold-up bike, and he had to try it out. He actually rode through the West Wing all the way into the chief of staff's office. It was really pretty hilarious. Another aspect to my time in the White House was covering the story of the Bush family. I mean, that whole legacy of his father being president, his mother first lady, and she was actually shooting digital photography before I did in the White House.
Wow.
And one of the first things I learned is when you say Mr. President, they both turn around. So referring to them by President 41 and President 43 helped. This is a portrait that a sitting that they did for me, which for years, this is something I really wanted to do. And I finally talked them into it late in the second term at Camp David. So one Sunday afternoon after church, the two of them were very relaxed, and I had them sit for portraits. And I wanted to get them their faces this close together because they look so alike, and I thought it worked out very well. And of course, their relationship is very, very traditional. That whenever they're together, they never really seem to talk about politics or the job. They talk about baseball. And by the way, the painting hanging, this is in the private dining room adjacent to the Oval Office, and that painting is a portrait of John Q. Adams, and that was the first son of a president to become president. And President Bush really admired him, so he had that painting hanging the entire 8 years. In Kennebunkport, this is the president and his father, and you can tell who's the working president and who's the retired president. The first lady and the president goofing around inside Buckingham Palace. They're running around like kids. And the Buckingham Palace is like the White House, but bigger, as you can see. And the president and the first lady together on election night in 2004. And this is after the president realized he was going to win the election versus John Kerry, hugging the first lady in the residence. And of course, the presidential pets were always a great subject. That's Barney, the Scottish Terrier, who came in as a puppy. And on the right, that's Spot, the Springer Spaniel. And Spot is interesting because Spot was actually born at the White House when his father was president, because his father had a litter of Springer Spaniels. And Spot was born at the White House, and Spot died at the White House in 2003. Mm-hmm. That's Barney, and the president called Barney the son he never had. He loved Barney. And the other Scottish Terrier that they had two, that's Miss Beasley. Miss Beasley was definitely more affectionate. The president loved the ranch where he can decompress. He's very proud of his ranch. People ask me what my favorite photo is of all the years, and this photo to me is pretty symbolic. It's very iconic. You have the president with the cowboy hat, profile. He's proudly driving around the ranch in his Ford F-250. You can't see Barney, but he's on his lap. The president liked to give tours of the ranch, and I would sit in the back and take pictures of the people he would give tours with. But the timing of this picture is interesting because this is a month before 9/11 in August of 2001. So every time I see this photo, I see a sense of innocence before the world changed. So I could prepare for a lot of things in the White House, but nothing could prepare me for 9/11. This is the president at Booker Elementary School in Florida that morning. And this is after the famous whisper in the ear when he was sitting with the children, and the president walked into the hold room. And I didn't know exactly what was going on. We all knew about the first tower getting hit, but we all thought it was just this horrific accident. And there was a TV, that's a live image of the towers burning. And I was just kind of frozen by that image. And I just stood there staring at it in disbelief. And I photographed the president. And I was waiting for the president to look up and look at it like everyone else in the room, but he didn't. He grabbed a notepad and immediately started to gather notes, preparing for his first statement to the nation and to the world. And I was really amazed that he didn't stop to really look and see what was going on. And you can see the timing on the wall there. That it was almost 9:20, and the second tower was hit just before 9 o'clock. And what people don't realize, and I'm going to try to walk you through the kind of the timing of that day, and just how much happened in such a short amount of time. You can see it's almost 9:30 on the wall, and the president is on the phone with the governor of New York, and Dan Bartlett, the president's communications advisor, was pointing to the TV because we hadn't seen the fireball explosion of the second tower getting hit, and it wasn't until this moment that they're replaying it on TV, and the president finally turns to see that image that's burned into everyone's memory.
And Eric, that is the photograph from me that you allow me to interrupt you on. The previous shot, the way he's pointing at that TV, that Bartlett, I didn't know his name, but that shot, the previous one that you just showed, for me, really describes how we all didn't understand what we were seeing. His whole body is just in shock. That guy.
Yeah, yeah, it was very shocking, and you know, all these minutes were going by very quickly, and the president was just trying to gather information before giving a statement before leaving the school, and then we were headed to Air Force One very quickly, and everything was focused on New York. I mean, we're talking, you know, 20, 30 minutes after the second tower was hit, and we this is the image aboard Air Force One, one of the first moments. And during the motorcade ride from the school to the airplane, we heard that the Pentagon was hit, the Capitol was evacuated, the White House was evacuated, Vice President Cheney was evacuated to a secure location under the White House. The entire U.S. airspace had been shut down. And this is we're talking about 9:45 around this time. And what's happening in this image here, that the president is literally having an argument with Andy Card, the chief of staff, because his immediate instinct was to return to Washington immediately to handle the situation. And he was hot. He's really literally telling Andy Card, well, I'm the president, you know, like what, you know, I can't go back home. You know, he really wanted to lead from the Oval Office. He didn't want to look like he was on the run. We started hearing a lot of false reports around this time. We heard that a car bomb exploded in front of the State Department, which was false. We heard that a fast-moving object was headed to the president's ranch, which was false. But then the president himself came out of the cabin of Air Force One, one of the most surreal moments, and he said, I heard that Angel is the next target, and Angel is the code name for Air Force One. And the discussion aboard the plane turned to the president's safety, which I didn't realize at the time, but the Air Force One pilot, Colonel Tillman, took our plane over the Gulf of Mexico, and we're just circling, you know, and basically until we realize where we're going, but we're trying to basically take him out of harm's way. And Andy Card and the staff, the Secret Service, the mill aide, we had the director of the Situation Room, the director of the military office. They were all there discussing where to keep the president safe and where to go. And again, the president very upset hearing that he cannot return to Washington. And by the way, technically, this is still during the film days of the White House. And I used a Leica M6 with a 21 millimeter for all these images on Air Force One. So I was literally just a few feet from the president, and I felt like he was staring through me. It was so intense. Around this time, around 10 o'clock, we heard, we didn't know, but Flight 93 had crashed in Pennsylvania, taken down by the people aboard the plane. Around the same time, before that, the president had issued a shoot-down order of anything that was threatening Washington or any other city. And that was a huge order. About 10:30, the North Tower collapses, and the president alone in the cabin is watching it on TV. And I just felt this sense of this utter helplessness at this point, because all we can do is just watch. And very horrific to see that happen on live TV, like everyone was watching, I'm sure. And finally, we learned that we're headed to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. where the president was able to finally get a grip on the situation with a teleconference with all the agencies involved that were able to connect.
Where is this, Eric?
At Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. That was our first stop to a secure location. And we were on the ground for a couple hours at the Air Force Base. You can tell that the frustration was still building with the president because he really wanted to get back to Washington. And we ended up flying to another Air Force base in Nebraska at Offutt.
And Eric, can you get a sense of those places? Were they ever really used a lot? Were those people surprised to have the president be there?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can tell it was definitely a surprise. I mean, for example, our first stop in Louisiana, the president didn't get into a limousine because there was not a motorcade there. They put him in a minivan, and he sped away. And I actually thought my story was over. I didn't think I would see the president again because they separated the staff, they separated the president, they separated the journalists. We're all on a bus, and luckily I was able to catch up. And I just kept going. You know, I didn't ask questions. You know, I didn't ask if I could stay. I just kept going with the story. And back aboard the plane, we finally realized we were headed back to Washington, which was a huge relief. Which it was the first time that I was able to actually call home off the airplane. And I called my wife, and my first words to her was, "Honey, I'm going to be a little late tonight." And I could hear her laughing through her tears. And as we approached Washington, we spotted the president and the staff spotted the Air Force jets escorting us to Andrews Air Force Base. So out of the left side of the plane, you can see the fighter jets, and out of the right side of the plane, you can see the plume of smoke still rising from the Pentagon. The president was finally back at the White House that evening, where he was in the PIOC, which no one really knew that existed before 9/11 under the White House. And the president did deliver an address to the nation. And that's the words that were on the teleprompter to begin his speech. September 12th, the next day, you can see the headlines that were in the papers that next morning. The president did visit the Pentagon. Jumping ahead to September 14th, the day of national prayer, and his father reached over to touch his hand after he delivered remarks at the National Cathedral. The president took the ground zero.
Can everyone shut off their mics?
Yeah, can people go on mute, please?
Yeah, everyone just mute. That'd be great. Thank you.
Roger.
I remember being inside the helicopter at Marine One, and as we approached New York City, the smoke from the disaster filled the cabin of the helicopter, and you can still feel the heat from the fire. But more importantly, the emotions from the firefighters were just oozing. It was like we were standing on a raw nerve. And you could tell they wanted the president to do something. They're hugging him, they're crying with him, they're saying, "Go get him, George." And the president delivered on top of the rubble, the famous bullhorn moment, which is totally organic, when a staffer handed him a bullhorn at the last moment. And the famous line, you know, "I can hear you, the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear from all of us soon."
And Eric, is that a secure zone at that point, or he's really walking into something he doesn't know?
Well, it was a spot that was picked for him to speak to the firefighters. And what I later found out he's actually standing on a flattened fire truck. That's in the rubble there. And the president walked into the Javits Center to greet the families of the missing. And it was on the schedule for like 20 minutes, but the president spent 2.5 hours hugging and greeting and crying with every single person in that room. It was an incredible experience to see that, and it was really one of the hardest moments to photograph, to try to respect the privacy but also document the history. There were kids walking around with pictures of their missing, people walking around with handwritten notes. "Have you seen my father? Have you seen my mother?" the president meeting with Arlene Howard, the mother of a fallen Port Authority officer in New York who lost his life, George Howard. And at this moment, Arlene Howard gave the president the badge that her son was wearing when he died on 9/11. That was the president leaving New York City. You can see the rubble still below. And this is the badge that was given to him. And the president carried this badge for weeks to tell the personal story of George Howard, just to tell people, give them a personal view of 9/11. And so one day in the Oval Office, weeks later, I asked him to pull it out for me, and I photographed it in his hand. So, 9/11 was off the charts, but I think probably the second most intense moment was the president's decision to go to war in Iraq. And this moment, he had made his decision in the Situation Room moments before, and I can tell he was very emotional. Matter of fact, I was standing in front of the Situation Room door when he left, and I literally had to jump out of the way before he ran over me and I can see the tears in his eyes and the emotion. And he walked through the Oval Office, and he walked the entire circle of the South Lawn. And so I waited for him to approach me, and I made this picture. You can see the weight of that decision still on his face. And then he spoke to me, which I was kind of surprised. He said, "Eric, are you interested in history?" And all I could say was, "Yes, sir." He said, "These pictures you're taking are very important. The one in the Situation Room and the one here in the South Lawn." And just as he said that, Vice President Cheney and Don Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, came out of the Oval Office and they're deciding to announce the timing of the war in Iraq. The president, one of the untold stories was the president's meetings with lots of wounded warriors and vets. The president always said that it was part of his job to meet those who have lost a loved one, and that we should do everything we can do to honor the fallen. Every city he would go to, he would have these private meetings with families. He would to look them in the eye and to explain his decision why he went to war. And a lot of these meetings are very tense, very dramatic, but private. This young boy lost his father, and the president's meeting with him. An injured soldier who can barely lift his arm to salute his commander-in-chief. And these are just a few images of some travel and aboard Air Force One, which was a great way to see the world. I really wish I'd been able to receive air miles, but that's not how the government works, unfortunately. This is in Tel Aviv, Israel. The Prime Minister of Israel and the President kind of goofing off before a press conference, and Prime Minister Olmert on the right, he wanted to see who was taller.
Is this when they met Abbas?
Olmert.
No, but didn't Olmert meet Abbas? Didn't they organize that meeting? The Bush White House?
Probably so, because that was around the time that they're trying to make a peace deal.
Right.
Yeah, because we did visit that area too as well. This is the president visiting Albania, the first U.S. president to do so, and he was there, kind of a hero's welcome, and amazing to see that many hands on the president at once. Kind of wondering what the Secret Service was thinking. You'll never see this anywhere. It's the first time I've shown this image. This is our last trip to Iraq, which really didn't end up that well. You might remember the shoe throwing incident from the Iraqi journalist. And I believe I was the only still photographer to capture the shoe in the air. So that's the president ducking, and that's the shoe. And I turn around, and that's the Iraqi journalist throwing the second shoe. There are two. And people ask me, was I ever scared during my time at the White House? This is the only time that I was really I didn't know what was going to happen after, the first shoe. I thought, bedlam would just happen because all the agents swarmed. If you ever watch a video of this again, the president, all he had to do, he motioned very subtly with his hand to his lead agent to stop, because I thought they're going to jump on him, and he diffused this instantly, or else it would have been just craziness. And this is the president talking down the prime minister of Iraq after that incident. He was very thoroughly embarrassed through an interpreter on the right. Leaping ahead, November of 2008, President-elect Obama in the Oval Office for the very first time. This is the famous transition meeting that happens after every presidential election, which again didn't happen this term. But I actually made this image with a remote camera as a backup that I mounted on the mantle over the fireplace. I was the only photographer, only person allowed in this room at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm standing on the other side of that coffee table, waiting for like them to connect or talk, and they're looking at me like, "Are you done? We want to get this meeting started." So that didn't really make a picture. So as I was walking out of the Oval Office, as the door was closing, I fired 2 frames of them beginning their talks, and luckily this one worked. So just as 8 years, this is the president leaving the Oval Office for the last time, and after years of wondering what this moment would be like, I thought it'd be very emotional, but the president's so direct. All he did was call for his coat about 8 o'clock that morning, and he said, "I'm going over," and he walked out of the Oval Office without looking back. The relief from the president's, and you could tell his face was just totally relieved. That the flight home to Texas was just a one nonstop party with friends and family. And this is an image with his mom. And you might remember that image of him leaving Texas. This is him returning to Texas as the former president, the bookend. And that's my last frame.
Wow. So Eric, I mean, you're a witness to so much. Can you say there are moments where everybody in that room is just humbled, like the way you described, we go to war, like, I mean, there's only a few people that get to witness that, right? Can you shed a little color on how humbling that was or not to Rumsfeld and Cheney, and who was advocating or who was against it? Can you share anything about that?
Well, what you realize is you're in these historic, very tense moments, and people kind of revert to what they're comfortable with. They're in their comfort zone, and all these people that work for the president were the best and the brightest. So it was easy for them to focus on what they're there for, their expertise, crystal clear, and that's the same thing I did. All I can do was I had to kind of put aside my emotions at the time to really kind of focus on the president's emotions, and that helped me kind of get through all the ups and downs, and trying not to think about the history, because it was really just kind of overwhelming to stop and think about it, but just really just reacting and trying to think about it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he ever ask you, Eric, take a break? Like, I've got to do this alone, like in any situation, whether it's with his wife or with, Rumsfeld or Card or any of those guys, like this one I got to do alone? You shouldn't.
There just a handful of times really where he asked me, he would, his code line was basically, "Thank you, Eric." And that would mean, okay, he's had enough. And but through the years, I would really I was able to really judge how he felt. Watching someone for that long, I kind of knew what frame of mind he was in just by the tone of his voice. Just by the micro expressions on his face, where you get to know someone very well, and to know whether to be in his face or not, or whether to be in his orbit or close. But typically those very intense moments, it was almost like I wasn't there. I really felt invisible during those tense moments, like on 9/11.
And can you shed a little light on Katrina and that experience?
Um, the Katrina experience was actually very personal to me because my wife's family is from New Orleans, and so I was more focused on getting them out of the city and to safety than actually doing my job. So it was the only time I really pulled away from that moment. And actually, it was the only time that was it's kind of weird timing. It was at the end of the president's vacation.